I'm so excited to be here. Again, this is the second annual Black Enterprise Disruptor Summit, and we have one of the most successful media and entertainment moguls of our generation here. Nick, you're an actor, entrepreneur, artist, producer, writer, TV and radio host, comedian, and media mogul. I'm gonna just say it again.
Don't forget Daddy.
And Daddy.
My number one job.
Number one job. We don't know how you do it. We don't know how you do it. So you've literally done everything in television, film, music, and comedy.
Yeah.
But I want to start this conversation talking about Wildin' Out.
Okay.
Does anybody else watch Wildin' Out just as much as I do and binge? Okay, we got some fans. Masked Singer. Anybody watch The Masked Singer on Wednesdays?
Appreciate it.
Amazing. But Wildin' Out, which was something that you incepted yourself. You came up with this concept, and now it's in its 21st season, going into the 21st season, and is a billion with a B, brand that includes tours, merchandise, restaurants, and a gym.
Yeah, right.
So my question for you is, when you came up with this concept in the early 2000s, did you know that it had the power to evolve from a show into a lucrative franchise and business?
I didn't have the foresight, but I had the insight. I mean, when we're talking about being disruptors, that to me was the definition of, I mean, disrupting and wilding out are synonymous for me, because people didn't understand it or get it when I wanted to create it. Ultimately, it's funny. I was a kid that was seeing some moderate success in the spaces of music and like acting, and but I was doing way better than a lot of my other comedian and rap friends, and had the ability, because I was hosting a bunch of stuff. I was doing movies. So at the time I had a deal with Viacom, as I had kind of graduated from the spaces of Nickelodeon into MTV. So I was cross-platform. And they said, what do you want to do? And I was like, yo, I think Ashton Kutcher had just did Punk'd. And they were like, you want to do something like that? And I was like, nah, not really. Like, I want to do something where it's kind of like, me and my friends, kind of what we do in the comedy clubs. And they didn't understand when I was like, yo, hip hop and improv together. And they were like, we don't know about that. We'll find something. So I took the money that I had, from various jobs, and put it all into my vision, and I rented out a comedy club, one of the more popular comedy clubs in Los Angeles, Comedy Union on Pico, and I got all my unemployed friends together, cats y'all may have never heard of, like Kevin Hart and Cat Williams, and a bunch of people at the time were just my guys that were looking like, yo, they saw me having success, and they were like, yo, put us on. So really I created it to kind of give my friends a platform, and so they could pay their rent and all of that stuff. So I kind of just got everybody in the club together. We screen printed some t-shirts. I created a logo, rented some cameras, and the rest was history. Once we shot that first pilot in I believe it was 2004, or maybe 2003, 2004. I then went back to MTV, and I was like, this is what I was talking about. And they were like, we love it. But the thing that I learned in that process is that was my first lesson in ownership, because I financed it myself. I own the intellectual property of Wildin' Out. And, still to this day, I own the brand. And for it to, I've gone through multiple deals of partnering and selling, and Paramount, now Viacom, which is now Paramount, has always been my partner. But at the same time, I've been the one controlling and moving the brand because it was mine. So they have to ask me permission.
Absolutely.
What to do with the brand. So that's always been super fascinating. So I've been able to be a disruptor in the space, even because normally you get a normal talent deal. Like Ashton Kutcher didn't own Punk'd. You know what I mean? Like, so then when he got tired of doing it, they could bring somebody else in, or they could put it somewhere, you know, and a lot of, you know, the cast of the Jersey Shore, they don't own that IP, the Jersey Shore. So what I've learned throughout that process is like, oh, this is something I've created. And like you said, over 2 decades later and billions of dollars and so many people that have launched from that platform, and the fact that it's still to this day, you know, Paramount's #1 digital brand across all platforms. It shows that it still has life and it continues to grow, even in a space where linear television is shaky and uncertain. So it's one of those things that it's always been a disruptor in every space that it enters, and it's driven by the youth. So, you know, now, you know, I'm super excited. Literally last week I was in Botswana and we're just launching Wildin' Out Africa because, so
that's major.
When you think about everything that, you know, all the careers that have been launched and discovered, you know, off of Wildin' Out here in the States. Like I said, the first time a lot of people ever saw Cat Williams or Kevin Hart or Mikey Day, Pete Davidson, Matt Rife, you know, D-Ray, Corey Holcomb, like all of those people was, you know, they were DC Young Fly, that you never heard of these people before you saw them on Wildin' Out. So I was like, now there's a whole continent of 1.5 billion people or that I can kind of tap in and find some new talent in there. And really, you know, like I love the fact that, you know, Atlanta is almost like our Wakanda in the States.
Yes.
And it's beautiful that like everywhere you go, you just see people of color and you see all of us. But, you know, when you go over to the continent and then to be able, like, I love that there's studios being built and owned here by, you know, us.
Yes.
And the same thing with what 50's doing in Louisiana. But imagine there's a whole continent that we can tap into and do all of that stuff. So, you know, I feel like now, even being a disruptor even more, I'm gonna blaze a trail over there across the water and go give back home.
We love that, taking it back to the motherland.
Yeah, indeed.
So, you know, I just want to take it back to what you said when you created this idea and presented it to Viacom at the time. That was a disruptive approach because, I mean, did they say like, hey, you can partner with us? Like, how did you come to the table and make sure that your IP was protected and was able to be monetized later on?
Yeah, I was a rebel in that sense. I mean, even my own team were like, nah, you can't do that. You know, they're not gonna go for that. And even luckily, you know, again, you gotta manage your relationships extremely well. And I had great rapport with the executives, and most people normally there's this weird like veil between talent and the executive side a lot of times.
The business side.
And I kind of pulled that veil back to where it's like, you don't have to handle me with kid gloves. You don't have to yes me to that. Like I understand business. So one, when I come in and I'm discussing everything from budgets and back end, and they're like, okay, and you know, I'm young at the time, so they're like, should we talk to your manager, your agent? I was like, nah, you can talk to them, but let's have the discussion first and how we want to get through it. So I think I got a lot of respect, you know, initially from that, and then from there, when it was time to actually handle the business, then you allow the attorneys to talk to the attorneys and everything, but everybody would be on the same page. So it was definitely a deal like the first of its kind. And, you know, I think a lot, as we see it now, I was dabbling in, you know, multiple platforms and also being an artist as well as an executive. I was in music as well as acting and comedy, but nowadays everybody's doing it. You know what I mean? You see all of these young influencers, and I'm super inspired by, you know, the way the game is right now, because I remember I was the only one doing that. Like I was the only one trying to merge, you know, the spaces of hip hop and television and you know, at that time. And you know, I remember making skits and doing shows and producing stuff before there was a YouTube. You know, and now it's like that's the place to go to do it. But we were like, how can we get these out to the people? And television was the only way at the time. So being that disruptor, that was my only I didn't have any other option. That was the only way to say, hey, and I think it was because of my impatience, you know what I mean? But it was also because I was just diligent in my vision, you know, and I saw it and I knew no one else saw it. And like so much so that when they told me no, they didn't understand what I was talking about, I was like, all right, I'm gonna go do it and I'm gonna show you. And then once I showed them, I was like, well, I got it. If you really want it, how much is it worth to you? Because that was at the time where I was like, if you don't take it, I can go next door and they'll take it, or I could go here. So it gave me the negotiating power, and it allowed me to, you know, have the strong deal that I've had for over decades.
You know, one of the things I think I forgot to mention in your long intro and long portfolio, you were also the chairman of Teen Nick for years.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask, how did working for a major corporation like Nickelodeon, how did that better you as a businessman and help you really understand what it took to run a media conglomerate?
Interestingly enough, I never wanted to be in front of the camera. That was never my vision. Like, I always was fascinated by, you know, being behind the scenes and producing, both in the spaces of music and in television. You know, my dad was a struggling televangelist in the city of Charlotte, North Carolina. So he would be on your cable access early Sunday mornings, you know, and we would have to go to the cable vision studios and learn the workshops. And I was learning this at like 11, 12 years old to really be able to operate the cameras and help my father. And in that sense, I fell in love with being behind the scenes and producing and putting things together. And even the same thing in my music spaces, like coming up in the church, like I would play instruments and produce. So I always wanted, you know, I wanted to be, you know, the Jermaine Dupri's of the world or the Quincy Joneses of the world that actually helped people. So all through my career, I wanted to be that conduit for individuals. And so in that process, even by the time I started I was doing stand-up because I was trying to be an outlier. My dad said, like, every kid in these projects want to be a rapper, but you're funny, you know what I mean? And, you know, he didn't want me, you know, at the time, it was the 90s, so it was a lot of the, you know, gangster street rap. He was like, you're likable, be that guy. So I started doing stand-up at a very young age. And again, I was a disruptor in that space. I was the only kid amongst everyone from Dave Chappelle to Chris Rock to, you know, the Wayans to all of these people. And they would be like, who's that kid on stage? Therefore, and I was still around during those times, but I was too young to do stuff like Comic View and Def Jam where our people were able to be seen. So luckily, an outlet that was available to me, you know, some of the producers from Nickelodeon at the time saw me at the Hollywood Improv, and they're like, yo, the kid's got something. So I went from being a stand-up to they gave me an opportunity to be behind the scenes. I was the first job I had at Nickelodeon. I was the audience warm-up. And that was, you know, for 4 hours, I had to entertain an audience at like 16 years old of kids and their parents who came to see All That and Kenan and Kel. And so I would put together these routines that would just keep me going for 4 hours. And then the producers were like, yo, the kid in the audience is funnier than what we doing on stage. So from that process, they were like, he has a voice, he has a vision, let's tap into that. And luckily they gave me that opportunity, so I started writing. And at 17, I was the youngest staff writer in television history.
Amazing.
So
amazing.
Yeah, it was a long time ago, but thank you.
You've been disruptive for decades.
So then in that space, I remember being 17, saying, you know, one day I'm gonna run this company, you know, and, you know, not understanding how it all worked, but 10 years later, I was the chairman and running the teen division of Nickelodeon. So, you know, manifest.
That's impressive.
Into existence. And that was, even when I got that job, it was more, I had to go into the executives and the heads of, you know, Viacom at the time and say, yo, you guys have a whole division that I speak to. That's my audience. Let me, you know, and I had, you know, obviously I had a bunch of, you know, wins up under my belt already. And I was like, you know, I put together a presentation and a portfolio of how I could take the business from here to here. And they gave me the shot, and I ran, Team Nick for 10 years.
Wow. You know, Nick, you have this keen ability to manifest your vision, right?
Yeah.
Can you talk about just how you were able to really sharpen that skill set or gift and apply it to the businesses and your career and your success?
It ain't nothing but Jesus.
Amen.
I mean, I say that in jest, but it all
Yes.
seriousness. I mean, the power of faith was, taught to me early on. And I mean, we call it manifestation now, but I mean, speaking things into existence, understand how to name it and claim it. I would just speak things. I would walk in the rooms and just say, this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna do, and stand firm on it. You know what I mean? Because faith without works is dead. So I was like, I'm gonna show you. Not only am I gonna speak it, I'm gonna actually walk in it. And people thought I was crazy. People thought that I've heard no way more than I've heard yes. And I take all of those no's and use them as ammunition and use them as fuel to drive. That's the worst thing you can ever do to me, is tell me I can't do something, because I'm gonna work day and night to show you that I can. And that honestly is what has driven me and sharpened those skills of like just really understanding how powerful speaking things into existence actually are.
Right.
And I've done it all my life. And I mean, it's so much so that it's dangerous. Like sometimes I gotta keep my mouth closed.
Speaking too much.
I done told people I want a village of kids, and look what happened. Like, I'm gonna just
we don't need to
keep
speak
it
that
quiet.
way anymore. Right. So Nick, hardships often teach the best lessons.
Yeah.
A question for you is, what challenges or obstacles have you faced, and how did that make you smarter when it comes to finance and business?
Yeah, well, as you all know, I live my life out loud.
Yes, you do.
So,
Always in the headlines.
yeah, so, but I'm growing in that sense that where I'm learning, the less you say, the more power you have. And it's just being stoic. And sometimes I come from that school of thought originally, I gotta let everybody know who I am and what I can do. As a stand-up comic, you had to step out there and be like, hey, look at me, come see me. But in my elder years that I've in this business, I'm learning like, I don't have to telegraph everything, you know what I mean? I wanna make more moves and less announcements. You know what I mean? So because there's plenty of things, and I learned the hard way of jumping in front of stuff and just speaking, saying, I'm about to do this, and there's a difference between manifestation and just getting out there and it being propaganda or pontificating. And I would say, even like before projects were announced, I didn't know, I didn't have the coof to say, all right, let me let that cook before I let the world know what we're doing. And it would kind of snatch the rug or even catch some of my partners off guard. And I'm like, oh wow, I was making that announcement, out of excitement. I was a young kid wanting to let, or trying to almost be braggadocious, where even you learn those lessons that, let the work speak for itself. Success is loud enough.
It is.
So those are the things that, and I could say from everything from career decisions, from personal life, when you just get out there and you talk too much, then all you become is too much talk.
But that's a bar. Nick, I read in the LA Times that you said you generate at least $100 million a year.
Yeah. Have to.
To support your family.
Facts.
What strategies and intentions have you made to remain both relevant and booked and busy? Because it seems like every year you have at least one extra show. Like, I couldn't even run down how many things you're doing currently.
Yeah.
It's dizzying. But how do you do that?
I say you got to keep cooking while the pot is hot. And I'm gonna be honest, like, our mentality. I come from two spaces. One, I feel like it's a great blessing that I get to wake up each and every day, and my job is to be creative and to create opportunities for others. You know, that in itself, you know what I mean? Like I've had, you know, 9 to 5s before, and the fact that I get an opportunity to do what I love that doesn't feel like work. And like I always say, my vocation is my vacation. It's like I'm so dedicated that I feel like everything I do, it's not a job. You know, I love every aspect of being a creative. But if I tap into the honest and almost the fearful side, is I wake up with that blessing, holding it tight, because I think at any moment they could take this away from me. And we've witnessed it, you know, especially when it comes to, you know, us as a people.
Yes.
They'll give you a slither, but if you start feeling yourself too much, they'll snatch it from you. And so I've been able to finesse and walk, and I've come close many times where they be like, you're going a little too far, you're getting a little too ahead of yourself. And that's kind of even what I was speaking about before, where, you know, the power of silence, the power of just moving and observing in the room opposed to just being boastful. That all comes with it, because now I'm watching the rooms. Now I'm watching when, like, all right, where's the animosity? Where are the people that are saying, nah, he can't do it all, or he's a little too full of himself, or he's moving in a way that if we had the opportunity to catch him slipping, we're gonna highlight it. You know what I mean? And I feel like that's the thing when it comes to when there's someone who is attempting to help black people, they want to highlight their flaws. And I've personally learned that, all right, if I just stay low and keep firing, if I just have that opportunity to open up as many doors as I possibly can, when it's all said and done, I can say, look what I built, and it'll speak for itself. And so that's why every job, I don't turn down nothing but my collar, and most of the time that stay popped. So so it's one hand where I just love it. It fuels me.
Yes.
You know what I mean? I can't stay stagnant. And on the other hand, it is like, all right, how long they gonna allow me to keep doing this? And with those two things together, it's a different type of drive. And of course, like I'm at a state now where if I wanted to, I could go, you know, on an island with all my kids and just never have to come back. But I feel like now I'm in that space, I'm in that season of my life where everything that I'm building is for others. Everything is platforms to show people, look, I did it. You know what I mean? It was a little snotty-nosed kid from the projects that just had a vision.
Wow.
And if I could do it, anybody could do it, especially with the tools and essentials that these young people have today.
I love that you said, as a creative, you're doing exactly what you love.
Yeah.
But for many of us, sometimes that struggle between creativity and business can be a challenge, monetizing those talents. What advice would you give to this generation of young creators and business people about staying true to themselves, but also being diligent about finance and business?
Yeah, first and foremost, I can't give nobody advice. I don't give advice, I give insight. And the insight that I have is when I see these young people today, it's the potential is so vast. I've literally watched these people become millionaires, helped be, also have been a conduit for someone who just made a video on their phone and was funny or insightful or had some wisdom, or and look up a year later and they're millionaires.
Wow.
And that comes, the responsibility of that is heavy. So now my advice or insight is more speaking to the spirit. You know what I mean? Because the success is so tangible. Because a lot of the same people I watched become millionaires, so-called overnight or even in a year, I watched them lose it. And then
money mismanagement?
Not even, or just the pace in which this world is spinning now, you know, specifically in the space of entertainment and being content creators. The individual that's hot or has something that everybody wants in January, they don't want it no more in December.
Yep.
You know,
right.
So it's like when you get your moment,
yep.
how do you turn your moment into a movement?
Yep, capitalize on that.
Yeah, so it can continue to go on. And that's the advice that I try to give to these younger individuals, because you're going to get your shot. If you pop it, you're going to get your shot.
So what preparation? What does that preparation process look like? Because if someone is that talented, like you said, eventually something is going to pop. How do they prepare for that moment?
Stay hungry. Stay vigorous. Stay dangerous. Stay unpredictable. As soon as you get comfortable, they don't want you no more. You know, learn how to bob and weave, learn how to be unexpected. You know, because in that space, okay, you can't hear me now.
Can you get a handheld, possibly? Thank you.
There we go.
Much better.
Yeah. But yeah, I would say stay hungry, stay vigorous, stay dangerous, stay unpredictable, because as soon as you get comfortable, they looking for something else. And that's just how audiences are. It's to no one else's detriment, but just the attention span. I feel like we're in the microwave generation, the ADHD generation, where everybody wants it and wants it now. As soon as they're done with it, they on to the next. So you got to be able to maneuver and operate in that same space. And in speaking to these younger people now, if you would have asked me that question of, you know, if I'm speaking to, you know, Generation X, or if I'm speaking to even millennials, I would probably have different advice. I would say stay the course. I would say focus on your craft. Because those were the principles we were raised on and actually seen success with. But this generation is different. As much as they should, if you have a gift, walk in your gift, but have multiple gifts and understand how to flip your gift. For those Gen Zers and the alphas and all that, like, they need to understand, because things are just from AI to all of this stuff is moving at such a pace that you have to be multifaceted. You have to be thinking 10 steps ahead of everyone else.
Right. And I was going to just touch on that briefly, because with the advancement of AI and just living in the gig economy and the creator economy. So even for like your children, I think your oldest about 13.
Yeah.
How are you coaching them and preparing them for this new world?
Man, it's so crazy. I'm learning from them. Like I said, my son is the most brilliant young little teenager I've ever witnessed. And, you know, I've given him everything that he needs. Like he got his DJ equipment. I bought him his first DJ equipment for his birthday a few years ago. Then now it's evolved into now he got actual real producer music equipment. So he's doing everything from Logic to Pro Tools. And at 13, where I remember being his age and wanting that stuff. I remember working in an auto mechanic shop just to pay for studio time, that we would get 3 hours and hopefully get one song done that he can do now in 15 minutes in his bedroom. So, and watching how fast he maneuvers, like he's making beats and gaming and streaming and all simultaneously. So I was like, man, they said my mind moved fast, but I couldn't imagine my mind moving at that pace. You know, so I'm really learning from them. And then, you know, that's my son, and my daughter, I'm just scared. Like, because all that's available to her, you know, even at 13, and, you know, watching, she's such a brilliant and poised and really just understands the world in which she's in, where, you know, like I said, we've been blessed because it could have been different, you know, and just knowing what these young people have access to. And specifically, I'm just so much more overprotective over my daughter because of all of the things that, you know, that women face, even when it comes to everything from, you know, their image and, you know, the things that are perpetuated directly to them. So much so she's focused. Hopefully it works. She's focused. She's trying to choose. She wants to either go to, you know, Yale's drama department, or she want to go to Howard. I'm trying to get her to go more to Howard, to the HU vibe. But it's like the fact that, you know, at 13 years old, she's already doing college preparatory. So I'm just saying, stay the course, you know, and keep being the respectful and loving and insightful young individuals that you are. So
Amazing.
you don't have me up here crying about my 13-year-old daughter.
Aw.
But, no, but in that it's serious. You know, like I said, I take, you know, my fatherhood probably is my number one priority and duty in all that I do, and hopefully now that's starting to reflect in my work, because I'm trying to be a little bit more responsible in the platforms that I do create.
Yeah, no, we definitely noticed the shifts.
Yeah.
We are going to take 2 audience questions, and we do say just give your name and give your question. Not a comment, but a question.
Like, how can you help me with my business?
Right.
That's a great question.
Right, that's the question. As long as it's a question. So the questions are going to be, if you have a question, please raise your hand and Asia will give you the mic. Thank you. You see one in the back.
Hi, my name is Simone Slaughter. I'm a TV producer. And my question for you, Nick, is when you are a producer, but you're also navigating the corporate space, and you spoke here today about some of your adversities with the battles that you fight. How do you navigate the fine line of what battles to pick when it's like what you stand for and what you want to produce and what you want to create, the messages that you want to put out based on, or in opposition to like the powers that be or the companies that you're working for, not wanting you to deliver those messages, or maybe that's not the angle or the approach that they want to take, but it might be the hill that you want to die on. Where do you draw that barrier between like which battles you pick and what you want to stand on?
Such a amazing and dynamic question, Miss Simone. Honestly, the quick answer, I would say you got to know how to put the medicine in the candy. And as we know, the candy at times it's not substance. You know what I mean? It actually can be bad for you. But as a producer, you know that this is the media that we're in. And as I could say, media is manipulated entertainment designed to influence all. And there's nothing wrong with influencing people. And if the media is a form of entertainment that manipulates, it manipulates your spirit, and we can make people feel good, we can make people feel bad, we can make people desire things, we can make people be adverse to things. That's a great power. And a lot of times it is all about capitalism and commerce, and people are trying to sell things, that's the business that we're in. We're entrepreneurs. So it's a great balance. So what I've always done, and luckily I've had humor and comedy on my side, is that there's such great power there because you don't ever have to shy away from anything. If you can make people laugh, you can make people feel, then you can talk about anything. But I've also made the mistake, you know, of removing the humor and sometimes, you know, standing on my soapbox or, you know, dying on mountains that are so controversial or so even disjarring in a way that when you make people choose a side, you better be ready to run that marathon all the way through, regardless of what happens. And that no longer becomes business, but that becomes activism, which is fine, you know what I mean? But you got to know that those two, that's oil and water, you know, because we are in a space of where the whole goal is to make people feel good. But part of being a disruptor is making people uncomfortable. So you have to find that balance of when am I showing up to make you feel good, and when am I showing up to make you uncomfortable? And it's funny, like I personally I'm a shapeshifter, and I have the ability. I might, you know, one second you might see me up here in a 3-piece with the you know, shiny shoes on, and you know, all of that, and then the next second you might see me in here you know, in a black leather jacket, a turban with my fist in the air. Or the next second you might see me with the flyest tennis shoes on, and wilding out, you know, looking like your teenage son. So I've been able to deliver different messages to different demographics and audiences based off of, it's all the same person, but I still know who and when to deliver it. And when you can build a brand that's that diverse, that can speak to multiple people and multiple times, I think there's value in that. Yeah. And then so I think if anything, I would just say, you know, be diverse in your approach, and whatever it is, whatever that message is, make sure if it's for the masses, it's easy. If it's for a certain demographic, make sure that demographic is listening, and make sure that demographic is supporting you.
Amazing. So we have time for one more question. Name and question, please.
Hi, Nick Cannon.
Hi.
Good. So my name is Victoria Lamar. Just to quickly introduce myself, I was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. I am a serial entrepreneur, so I own 3 companies, Securing Degrees, Securing Grants, and VM Ventures Real Estate. And so a bit about my background, I graduated high school with $3 million in scholarships.
Okay, talk your talk.
Yes, and so from there, I now partner with school districts, nonprofits, and organizations with the goal of helping students achieve a debt-free education. And now I've helped them accumulate a bit over $20 million in scholarships and grant funding so far. And so my question is...
You need to be sitting up here and I can be asking you questions, Victoria.
Look, so my question is, with me being pretty multifaceted and having kind of like my space in so many different areas, I want to know, like, how do you stay focused on the mission? Because I feel like sometimes when, you know, you're super ambitious, you have a lot going on, you know, someone sees you as someone who can execute efficiently, sometimes people can give you all these tasks and you're just like, okay, am I aligned to the mission? Am I deviating from the mission? And as someone like yourself, who has 100 roles, how do you make sure you're staying focused and aligned to your common goal and you're not deviating too far away from the task?
Wow.
That was a hefty question.
Rumble, young queen, rumble.
Yes.
Thank you.
That's, I mean, you can, if I'm speaking to you directly, you can tell that you have a fire inside you. You have a light, and I would just say, don't let nobody diminish that. You're already on your path. You're doing all that you need to. A lot of people told me over the years, focus on one thing. And there's value in that insight when that one thing is all you have. But clearly you have multiple things inside, and you've proven it time and time again. So you're not a one-track thinker, you know, and you're someone of this generation. So what I personally do in those things, I use that as my superpower, you know. If I would go on a long spiel and tell you, you know, in 3rd grade, I was diagnosed with ADHD. You know, I say that that's when they had first implemented the H. You know, it was ADD, and then I said the 88, I was the high def version. I was all over the place. But where my elders thought it would hinder me, I turned it into being able to do multiple things, and I started to understand time management, and more importantly than time management, energy management. So it's where do you put your energy, and what energy do you not allow in to stifle all of that fire that you have inside you. So focus is very good, but it's almost a compartmentalization. It's almost like take that focus and have laser vision. And I say that because when you have laser vision, you can pop things off very quickly. You know, where before when you had to focus, you had to manually focus. So I would say compartmentalize in that sense of when it's something that you have, dedicated, shut everything off until that task is complete, and then immediately move on to the next thing. Being someone, and I'll even say this, being someone in the entertainment industry, usually we're moved around and shifted and dictated based off of someone else's vision. You got to show up to an audition. You got to hope this studio is going to go through with, you know, the plans that they had to green light this project or do that. And that always disrupted my spirit to then say, I'm not going to sit around and wait for someone else to dictate my livelihood. So in those spaces, I became the writer, I became the director, I became the producer, and said, I'm gonna do it myself. And the same people that these people are getting their funds and their leadership and their, drive from, I'm gonna go to those people and say, hey, I got exactly what, and I'm gonna cut out the middleman and say, is there a way that I can do this? So that kind of turned on my entrepreneurial spirit in that space of, I then focused on my passion. I focused on me, and I went inward and say, if there's a movie that I want to make, I'm going to go develop it. If there's a television show I want to create, I'm going to go do that. So, and then I kind of transferred over into business when I wanted to be in the tech space. I was around at the beginning of Beats by Dre. I was like, I want to do the same thing except for a more affordable market. And we made, $200 million in sales in headphones, in spaces like Walmart. At the same times where Beats were costing $300, my headphones cost $100.
And that was the strategy.
And that was the strategy of just saying I saw something, and I'd never been in that space before. And the same thing of still being into consumer products now. It's just like I see something, I want it, and a lot of people will say, nah, you can't do that.
Right.
And it's like, nah, I'm gonna show you I can do it. I'm gonna go learn, understand, and put my focus in those spaces. And once I got it, I'll then be able to delegate and surround myself with the people who can help me grow in that space, and then I can move on. So it's almost like you have to really be the king or the queen of your royal court and really put the right people in place to allow you to just delegate and be the leader in those spaces. So like I said, I only encourage you and say continue to go, because I know I'm gonna be working for you one day.
Nick, in 30 seconds or less, we're in this room with creatives, visionaries, entrepreneurs just like yourself who are looking to disrupt their respective industries and build billion-dollar brands just like you did. Can you leave us with some insights in a few more seconds? What takeaways would you leave us with?
Ooh, this is always the pressure because there's so much inside of me, and like I said, I'm very much in this space now to where less is more. Everybody has a microphone these days, so you got to be very careful who you listen to. And the best advice that I've ever received is to not take advice. Especially don't take advice from people in spaces that aren't where you envision yourself to be. And that's no disrespect or hate to anyone in our families, or our counterparts, but sometimes they just don't see your vision. You're in this room for a reason. You're a disruptor for a reason. You're not thinking on the same path as the typical person. You zigging when everyone else is zagging. And I've always been that person, and no one, if everyone had the vision, they'd all be doing it. So you have to shut out everyone else and take your own insight, take your own advice. And that's why you're a disruptor. So if anything, I would say just, build yourself up. And I always say this, be a self-generator, self-motivator. And, the way you motivate yourself, get in that mirror each and every day and speak your vision to yourself. And then once you got that generated, generators are things people plug into. And you got to build yourself up because everyone else is going to be trying to drain you of your energy. So that's where that motivation comes in. So those two things play hand in hand. So, be a self-generator, self-motivator, and speak things into existence.
Ladies and gentlemen, give it up one more time for Nick Cannon.